Project for today is going to be this Everide Hornet zero turn. I don't know too much about it other than I know it's been sitting outside for about a year. It's got a 25 horsepower Briggs on it. They did say they were having trouble with one of the drives. They would be mowing for a while, and then when it got hot, one of the drives would quit working, so they could only basically drive in circles with it. So we're gonna see if it'll fire up for us first, and then we'll be able to test out the drives. If it is a bad hydro, we probably will just end up stealing some parts off of it. I'll probably end up taking this motor off of here because I've got plenty of other projects that could use this motor, because it's in the thousands of dollars to replace one of these hydraulic pumps, so it's probably not really worth putting that much money into. This one has actual hydraulic pumps, and then it's got drive motors down on the wheels. It's not like a transaxle style. So I'll get you set up and we'll see if it'll fire up first off. I'm gonna check the oil on it quick before we get started. It's on the little above the add mark, but good enough to test it out. I did already check in the gas tanks. Those looked like it wasn't too bad of gas in it. I'll hit the boost on the battery charger. I think our key switch is a little rusted up or something. I have to try jumping the solenoid on this one, but I'm probably gonna have to bypass that seat switch to do that. I'm gonna jump the solenoid here and see if it'll. I don't think we're getting enough juice. Alright, I've had the battery charging for a while. I'll try this again. Well, it runs, but we got a heck of a backfire. Not sure if maybe it got some water down in there. The valves are sticking now or something, or what, but we could have got a mouse nest too. Yeah, I see a little bit. Looks like there might be a mouse nest down in there. Probably chewed on this spark plug wire. Something is shorting out. I'll pull the plugs on it, see what they look like, and go from there. Yeah, I'd say that one wasn't firing too good. The gap is about closed up with carbon. So that would be part of our issue. Take the one out of the other side. That one's got a little carbon on it, but not half as bad as that other one. I'll grab a couple of plugs and we'll throw them in and see what it does after that. This one takes a Champion RC12YC. I'm hoping that was their only issue. This was supposedly a good engine, but it does have 520 some hours on it. So depending on how good they were on their oil changes, it might be a little bit tired. Let's try this again. I'll throw the air cleaner back in, and you don't want junk blowing in there. Still doesn't sound real great. It's better than it was, but I'm still wondering if we got a chewed spark plug wire or something. I'll throw the spark tester in there and we'll see what that's doing. Got the spark tester right down in here. You should be able to see that light flashing when I start it. That side looks like it's sparking okay. I'll try the other side. Well, we'll pull this cover off, see what we got going on under there. That side did seem like it was sparking a little more intermittent, so we might have a short. So as you can see, it's pretty filthy in here, and all of that is oil mixed with dirt and stuff, because this intake here was put on without putting the breather tube into the hole back here, so it was just blowing all the crankcase pressure out right there and just coating everything. And there is a mouse nest, of course, also, but I think our biggest problem is going to be the all this gunk on everything. I'll probably have to take that coil off and clean it. It's just so packed with stuff it can't even hardly spark. This side's dirty too, but not as bad. I'll get the shop vac and a couple scrapers and I'll clean this out. I got it mostly cleaned out. I want to take it outside and blow it off with air, but it's pouring rain out right now, so we'll take this coil off and see what that looks like. GoPro went dead when I was taking that coil off, but you could see how much crap is built up in there. So I'm pretty sure that was part of our issue. So I'll get that cleaned up, we'll put that back on. I'm going to take the other side off to make sure that's not bad too, but that'll affect it quite a bit, and there was a lot of junk built up in there. So hopefully that was our issue. I washed these up in the parts washer. They're not perfect, but it should be good enough that they should work now. So now we gotta gap it again. I've shown this on previous videos, so I'll probably just kind of skip through the process. I'm just using a business card to set the gap. That seems pretty good. I'll grab the other coil, put that back on, and then we'll test it out again. Alright, we'll try firing it up again. I don't have the cover back on here yet, but it should be alright. So I don't know if you could hear that kind of popping noise that was going on while it was running, but that was coming out of the intake. So I'm guessing that we have an intake valve that's not sealing. And guessing from all the stuff that was on there, this probably overheated and we lost the valve guide. So the intake valve's not closing all the way. So we'll pull the valve cover off of it, and then we'll do a leak down test on it to see what's going on. Might be able to just see the valve guide sticking out of there once we pull that cover off. But I might get it running good enough that we can take it for a test drive until we get that motor hot so we can see which one of them's bad. Because otherwise, if I wanted to use them on a future project, I want to know which hydro is actually bad. So we'll pull that cover off and go from there. So I want to get it turned over so it's the top dead center, so we can do a leak down test on it. I don't see a valve guide really sticking up, but that doesn't really mean that it's not moving while it's running. A lot of times they get warm and that's what'll get them to start moving around. So right now we're at top dead center. Both the valves, the rockers are got play in them, so that means we're no pressure on the valves. So basically what we're doing is pressurizing the cylinder, and it's going to want to try to spin on us. That's what I got the ratchet here for. So the video files I had of doing the leak down test, the files were corrupt, so I couldn't get them to work, so I thought I'd just explain real quick. This gauge would be the pressure I was putting into the cylinder, and this would be what it was staying at. So this, from what's leaking out of the engine, it'll show a lower pressure on this side, and it was within 10% or so on both sides, so that wasn't our issue. So then the next part, I do a compression test on it, so those files are actually still good, so I'll cut back to that. We'll spin it over and see what we got for compression. So we got like 160 pounds of compression. We'll do a compression test on this side and see how this one does. That was better. That was creeping up to 170. It dropped down a little once I stopped, but I'm not really seeing the issue. It could be in that carburetor, but just the way it was popping, it sounded like a valve. But being it was ingesting all that crap in there from that hole being open for the breather, we probably do have something down in the carburetor. So there might be hope for this yet. I think for now, I'm just gonna wait till the rain clears up here a little bit, and I'm gonna try to run it outside just to see if I can run it long enough to find out if that hydro is bad or not. I don't want to go too far on it if the hydro is bad, and it's going to be thousands of dollars to replace that. So I'll throw the cover back on. I'll just put a few screws in it, that way we can take it back off if we have to, and then we'll wait for this rain to stop and go out and test it out. I'm going to spin that hydraulic filter off of there. I'm not sure if it drains the entire tank when I do that or not, but it probably could use the flush anyway. Well, we got it, but we made kind of a mess. So the replacement filter I'm using is a Atlantic Parts filter. There's the part number they got on there. They also say that it replaces Kohler 12-050-08. I had a little bit of a hard time cross-referencing a filter for this thing, but I did have this one in stock, so we can go ahead and replace that. I'm hoping that is part of the issue. I did drive it off of the lift and it would barely move itself, so I'm thinking that I'm hoping the filter is what the problem is here. So I'll get that swapped out and then we'll fill it back up with fluid, because it did drain this entire tank here. So we'll have to fill it back up with fluid and then we'll try it again. Well, I got it topped off with fluid. It's actually a few days later. It seemed to burp all the air out of it. I did try to run it a little bit just to get some of the air out of the system, and then I topped it off again. I don't have real high hopes of this working, but we'll test it out and see what's going on with that. I think it's the hydraulic motor on the wheel on the other side there, so we might take that wheel off there and see what's going on there. Well, for now I'll fire it up and see what happens. kind of seems like it tries to go and then something kind of pops on this side. So I'm going to take this tire off and then we'll see how that hub comes off of there. I don't know if it's a taper fit or if there's a keyway in there. But I'll take this big nut off and see what's going on there. We might just have a stripped keyway or a hub or something, I'm hoping. And we'll have to take this brake caliper off here unless that just slides out. I'm not sure how that's really attached. I'll get this big nut off of here anyway. There's an arm down on the back side here that connected to that lever for the brake caliper. There's just a pin through the bottom here that I pulled out. It's kind of hard to get the camera in there, so I didn't record that. And this nut is an 1.5 inch socket. Let's see if that'll come off. I can see the key in there. I can't really tell if it's sheared. It kind of looks like something's going on there. There's like a shim or something in there, or just a piece of metal. I think I'll have to get a puller set up on this. Pull this off. I'll get that set up and bring you back. Alright, I got a puller set up on here. We'll put a little tension on it and see what it does. There it comes. That had some force behind it. Well, we didn't get lucky enough to have it be a sheared key. That still looks all intact, and the hub doesn't really look like it was spinning on there. There is like a burr down in there, but I think that's just from when it was put on. Might have been just cinched down a little too tight, made a burr on the end there. Now I'm going to try to fire it up and we'll spin it with this off the ground. We'll see if we can see anything else that might be a smoking gun on this one. Otherwise, I'm thinking this wheel motor is probably just bad. So I looked up hydraulic motor for this and it was like around 900 bucks. So this thing's really not worth putting that much money into, so I'm probably not going to do that. And then I did look up an exploded parts diagram for this motor. It's a Parker motor. I think it was a TJ series. And this is splined inside the pump, so I'm guessing the spline is bad because I can feel it grab and then it like pops over a spline when you're trying to go with it. So I pretty much knew that going in, that this might not be worth fixing. So it's got a lot of good parts on it though, and the hydraulic pumps are probably still good, and then the other wheel motor is good. So I'll probably scavenge those parts off of it. And then this motor seems like it's not in too bad a shape. I probably need to go through the carburetor on it to get it running correctly. And then this one could go in another mower. But I think we'll get the wheel and stuff put back on, and I'll get it back on the lift, and then we'll go through that carburetor, see if we can get that motor running good, and then probably end up tearing this motor off of this mower. So I think I'm going to do to make a little bit more room is I'm going to take this guard off the back here. Now I'll pop this cover back off so we can get to the carburetor. Might try starting it one more time with this cover off now, and I'll spray some carb clean down around the intake to make sure we don't have any intake leaks there before I take it off, because you do have to take the bolts out of the actual intake. This looks like it's not the right bolt in it here. So this has been apart before, so it's a good chance that it might have a leak. So I'll do that quick and then we'll continue on. One more thing that can cause some weird running issues on these is this. I disconnected the kill wire, just stuck it up here from this coil over here, because it has a diode in the wire that connects the two coils for the kill wire. So that can go bad, and then it can make a lot of weird running issues where it's cutting the coils in and out intermittently. So I'm going to disconnect the one wire. We'll try running it that way. I didn't hear much for leaks here when I sprayed, so it was kind of windy here with the fan blowing too, so I don't know how much I was getting down in there. But we'll try firing it up now with that wire disconnected and see if it runs any different. It's still kind of spitting and sputtering, so we'll have to go through the carburetor. So the way these are rigged up is you got to take the 4 bolts out for the intake and then pull it off, and then you can actually pull the carburetor off of the intake. Good and tight. Muffler's still kind of hot, so be careful on that. Hitting that. Forgot about the choke cable here. We got the throttle linkage. And we got that off of there. I'll probably wash this up in the parts washer after I get the bolts out here, and then we'll go from there. Another thing you can look at is these O-rings in here. These can get pretty hard, which these are pretty hard. I'll see if I have some replacements where that'll be an intake leak there too. So while this was apart, I decided to pop the valve covers off again just to check the valve clearance. I should have done that before when I had the valve cover off on this side, but they were a little bit loose, so I did tighten these up a little bit on both sides. This side, the exhaust was actually pretty loose, so all I basically did was you run it up to top dead center. There's no pressure on either one of the valves, and then you loosen this nut, and then this Torx head you just turn in until you get it tight on your feeler gauge, and then you cinch this outer one down and make sure it doesn't cinch down too tight on the feeler gauge there. Kind of just a quick overview of how I did that. And maybe we'll do a video one of these days on how to properly adjust the valves. This one's getting pretty long, so I just wanted to do that quick off camera, and then we'll go back to doing the carburetor. All right, I got the carburetor and intake cleaned up a little bit, and we'll take it off so we can get it apart. I have to grab a thinner socket for these. You can see there was a bunch of gunk down in there from all that stuff getting through there where the breather hole was open. Even down in here you can see where there's stuff in there. It's probably mainly that stuff being plugged that was our biggest issue. But I might just leave it connected to the intake so we don't have to mess with that gasket, and then we'll pop the float bowl off of it. See what that looks like in there. There's some rust down in there. I'll have to clean that out of there. I'm trying to get this plastic piece here out. This O-ring on here is pretty well shot. That's supposed to seal down on there. I don't think that's doing a real good job anymore, so we'll replace that. And then these two little jets, you gotta make sure are clean, that are down in the middle here. A lot of times these are two different sizes, so you got to make sure that you get them back in the order that they were in. I'm not sure if this one is that way or not. I've seen them kind of both ways. So I'll hose all this stuff out, and then we'll put it back together and see if it makes any difference. Another quick thing to note is these jets will fall out of there if you're flipping it around when you're cleaning it and stuff, so it is important to take them out and have them marked for which side is which, because when this goes down in, then that holds the jets in place. And there's little O-rings on each one of the jets that can go bad also, so I'll find an O-ring to replace this, and then I'll see if I have any O-rings for them little jets in there also. Alright, I got it all put back together, cleaned out in the intake here, and there is this plate on top that you could take those 3 screws out and pull that off, and there's some orifices and stuff to clean in there. But being that I think our biggest problem was the junk coming in the top, I'm going to leave that alone because there's a gasket in there that can go bad. But I can also do that while it's on the mower, so that won't be as hard to get to as the rest of the stuff. So I'll get this thrown back on. I got a couple new O-rings I got to put in here, and then we'll test it out. Alright, I got it put back together, and then I did put this choke cable back on. I missed doing that on camera, but let's see if it fires up. Might take a little bit to prime up the carburetor now, but That's running pretty good. It idled a little bit rough, but it might have took a while to get some fuel up there. But I think that's probably all of our issues we have with this. I think between doing the valve adjustment and the carburetor and the intake gaskets and cleaning up the coils and everything, I think it was a multitude of problems that was causing it to run the way it was. I'll get it all buttoned back up, and this one should be a good engine to put into another mower. I've got a couple that got blown engines, so this one will be used in something. Well, that's going to do it for this one. I'm going to leave the motor on here for now. This is getting to be a pretty long video. You'll probably see it in a future video of me pulling this motor and putting it in something else. So for now, I just put it back together, and that way I won't lose any parts off it or anything. Now, if you like this sort of thing, like the videos and subscribe to the channel, and we'll catch you on the next one.